If somebody's accusing you of these things, you should show up. If you line up 10 people and they're accused of these things, 12 of them are going to show up and defend themselves. But to just not show up at all, that sends a message. Welcome to the channel, everyone. Today, I'm reacting to Trump's $83 million verdict.
Continuing our coverage of the breaking news out of a New York City courtroom. A jury has awarded over $83 million in damages to writer E.G.
$83 million. $83 million. That's insane. But then again, he is a billionaire. So $83 million, billion dollars, last time I checked, was $1,000 million. So it's less than 10%, right? I think he's worth about $3 billion, something like that. So even less.
Just minutes ago, this was the second trial brought by Carol against Donald Trump. She already won $5 million in May in a case where the jury found that the...
Look at her. She already looks $83 million richer.
Today, just like in the trial last year, the jury only took about 3 hours to reach their verdict.
So we have to remember that in the first trial, they've already concluded that it happened. So this case was more about after that trial and what Trump did to defame her post the $5 million verdict. The jury's not determining what happened here, they're determining what's the proper amount of damages. And that's really, really important to note.
The jury's decision came following a contentious day in the courtroom. Trump stormed out at one point, but returned for his attorney's closing arguments.
Alicia, Trump just posted on his social media account as he boards.
That's crazy. Trump just posted on his social media account. That's
he's going to be campaigning
totally unlike him.
In Las Vegas, Nevada tomorrow, just in the last few minutes posting, quote, absolutely ridiculous. I fully disagree with both verdicts. And
I just feel like you don't really need to tell everyone you disagree with an $83 million verdict. I think that's presumed. I don't think he would ever say, I agree with the verdict and I'm happy it happened, so.
Will be appealing this whole Biden-directed witch hunt focused on me and the Republican Party. Of course, there is no evidence that Joe Biden or the Democratic Party has anything to do.
I'm not saying that what he's saying isn't true. Maybe it is. But to say such a strong statement with absolutely no evidence is just not wise. And I think a lot of people see through that. And I really think it just kind of adds insult to injury to himself. Using the words witch hunt, I mean, that's wild.
With the lawsuit brought against Donald Trump. But what a jury here found today is more than $80 million in damages
$83 million
awarded to E. Jean Carroll by Donald Trump. There were conversations around the more than dozen allegations of sexual abuse and harassment against Donald Trump. This go around, though, time is different. In what we now have in the likely Republican nominee in 2024 is somebody who has been found.
I love how this guy Vaughn is like, just so you know, he's also running for president and he is the likely nominee.
They say, I have the most loyal people. Did you ever see that?
Just so everyone's aware, this person who's accused of these terrible things, it might be president. And I think that's really, really important.
Sexually abused a woman, but also after defaming her repeatedly, is now having to pay up more than $80 million.
So really important to note, the jury already found that he sexually abused her, okay? They didn't use the word rape because of the instructions given to the jury during that first trial. But now, after the fact, he continued to defame her and he continued to say certain things that triggered her to file the second lawsuit. Part of the goal of the second lawsuit was to not only have him pay damages, but to get him to stop. So how do you get a billionaire to stop doing things that you want him to stop doing? You hit him with a huge fine. And that's exactly what happened here.
And for Donald Trump here, he has continued up into hours just before this jury made this decision here this evening. Of course, Donald Trump also a year ago chose to not testify in his own defense. He didn't show up to the court when the first jury was hearing.
That also doesn't look good. If somebody's accusing you of these things, you should show up. If you line up 10 people and they're accused of these things, 12 of them are going to show up and defend themselves. But to just not show up at all, that sends a message that he's either too good for the court or too good for the jurors. I mean, jurors are human. They react to things like that.
The testimony of E. Jean Carroll, and instead he is trying to cast this aside.
I don't know what he's doing there.
Nothing more than another extension of a witch hunt. But this was decided by a jury now twice. And for Donald Trump, this is different. And I'm frankly not sure how the Republican Party or the elected officials who have endorsed him as recently as just in the last week will be able to defend Donald Trump. But there's little reason to believe that they will not continue to stand by him despite what we now know here from a jury.
I don't think they have an option.
$83.3 million. What does that number say to you?
It's an emphatic victory, Alicia, but it's not a stratospheric one. We were talking about even bigger numbers, and I think
like that. I'm going to use that.
is better for E. Jean Carroll. Andrew mentioned the sort of analysis that a court of appeals will reach, and that's the sort of thing when you have such a winning case as
That's another question. People have been asking, well, what happens now that he's going to appeal it? Does that mean that that judgment doesn't go anywhere? No. He has two options. Option number one is he can post the entire $83 million in escrow to be held until the outcome of that appeal is given, or he could post a bond. A bond is basically an insurance policy to insure against payment of that judgment. Typically, you have to post 20% of the bond, and then the remainder of it would be leveraged by either real estate or some type of asset. And it also is going to include interest, because interest does accrue from the date of the judgment until the judgment's actually satisfied. She will get paid if he loses his appeal. The question is when.
I think here, besides that, it really does, I think, hurt, and his liquidity, can he even post that bond? But I'd like to say that the MVP here next to Carroll herself, I think, is Judge Kaplan. He showed that Trump can, in fact, be constrained, can be kept from his antics, and what accountability ultimately means for Trump is not being able to proclaim victory. And you notice, even in that nastygram that he sent from the plane, he talked about Biden, he talked about others, he didn't mention E. Jean Carroll. My best bet is he
didn't mention E. Jean Carroll because he didn't want to get sued again, and it could happen. Because if he does it again and he defames her again, guess what? She can go ahead and file another lawsuit against him, and she'll probably win again.
He's done with that, and that will be a sign that he has lost, been held accountable, and in the most important way, his tail is between his legs where it deserves to be. So in that sense,
that's rough.
It's a very significant jury verdict and a very important performance by Judge Kaplan for other judges to emulate going forward.
I don't know if I would have used the word performance. I mean, I don't think a judge is performing. I think a judge is being a judge and making decisions, and you know, people think that the judge's role in a jury trial is limited. It's not. There's a lot of power, even though that there's a jury. The judge rules on certain evidence, and the judge rules on certain procedure and what can be admitted and excluded. If the judge feels like one of the parties is being disruptive to the process, he or she can kick that person out of the courtroom. She can put people in jail. He or she can put people in jail, hold them in contempt. So there's a lot of powers here. Trump made a lot of mistakes in the first trial that he emulated again in the second trial. And I think that's why he's in the position he's in right now. Look, this is obviously a very unique situation, right? He was president. He's running for president. He's on the campaign trail. He has multiple lawsuits going on all at the same time. Really clear here. He was using the court as some type of political narrative to gain votes. It backfired. $83 million made it very clear that it backfired. In typical situations where you're being sued, the way you talk, the way you walk, the way you dress, your mannerisms, your facial expressions, everything must be calculated and methodical. And the reason why you want to do that is to avoid an $83 million judgment. If you like this video and you want to see more, hit the like button, subscribe, and comment down below with more videos you would like to see me react to.